In the small town of Halesworth, Jake faced the heart-wrenching decision to put his beloved dog Rusty down due to an inability to afford medical treatment. Rusty was more than a pet. He was Jake's unwavering companion through thick and thin. The local vet clinic was their last stop, a place where Jake hoped for mercy, if not a miracle. Yet, as Jake prepared for his final goodbye, the vet stepped forward with an offer that left him speechless. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. Jake could still not believe what the vet had just told him. He felt like he was almost ready to faint, and he had to try and hold himself standing against the wall. The vet himself did not move a muscle in response to Jake's reaction. He had clearly expected that this message would come as a shock to the desperate man. He had just offered him a chance to save his dog. After Jake composed himself a bit, he told the vet with as much conviction as possible that he wanted the vet to do anything to save his dog. He just did not have the money to pay for it, but the vet quickly made clear that he would not need a penny for this. And he also revealed that he would not be the one who would do the potential saving here. He asked Jake to sit down so that they could discuss a couple of things. Jake was surprised by the sudden, tense atmosphere. He was very curious as to what the vet was about to tell him, as it started to feel like this was not exactly a standard measure of operating. And that hunch was quickly confirmed in their conversation. The vet explained that no veterinarian clinic would be able and willing to save his dog's life for no money. The procedures required would simply be too long and too expensive to do pro bono. Jake also had the option to bring his dog to a sanctuary which could pay for the surgeries. But even if they were successful, they would not give the dog back to an owner without money, and they would most likely opt for putting the dog down anyway. So far, it was clear to Jake that his options were very limited, but the vet was clearly working towards something with these examples. And sure enough, the vet put one final option on the table. One that took Jake off guard a little bit. He knew that he would probably have to turn to some alternative options to save his beloved dog Rusty. He just did not know they would be anything like this. The vet did not want to tell Jake too much about the details of the treatment, as he did not want to scare him off. The vet kept repeating subtly that this was probably the only chance he had at potentially saving Rusty. Of course, Jake had some reservations and doubts, but he eventually agreed and told the vet he was okay with whatever measure was needed. The up till now very serious vet could not help but get a small smile on his face. He grabbed a piece of paper and wrote out a number on it. Jake needed to call this today, and they would give him some more information about the preparation he would have to make, plus a location where he was supposed to show up and a time. The only other thing was that he could not talk about this to anybody else. Not his friends, family, police, and especially not other vets. This had to be kept extremely secret, otherwise he could also get in trouble alongside Jake. The nerves were racing through Jake's body at this point. What the hell had he gotten himself into? Walking out of the office, Jake took a look at Rusty, who was patiently waiting for him. Even though the dog barely had the strength anymore, it still got up and started waging its tail when Jake approached him. It brought tears to his eyes and reminded him that this dog was by far the best friend he ever had. He could not lose her without trying his hardest. On the way back home, Jake started getting a couple of other nagging thoughts. He knew that he did not want to say goodbye to his best friend, and Rusty clearly wanted to spend time with him as well. But the dog did not know any better. And was it really fair for him to keep this animal alive at all costs? He had no idea how painful or difficult this mystery procedure would be, and what the quality of life would be for Rusty after. Back at home, Jake eyed the number scrawled on the paper. After a long moment, he dialed, heart thumping. The line crackled to life, and a brusque voice answered, sounding more irritated than welcoming. Yet, as soon as Jake mentioned the vet's referral, the tone softened. It was clear the vet's recommendation carried weight, transforming the conversation's atmosphere from cold to cautiously inviting. Jake poured out Rusty's grim situation over the phone, his voice cracking with emotion. He detailed Rusty's declining health, emphasizing the urgency. There was a heavy silence on the other end, as if the man was weighing options or considering the severity of Rusty's condition. The pause was palpable, filled with Jake's hopeful yet anxious breaths, waiting for a sign of hope or a final rejection. Finally, the voice returned, now with a hint of resolve. "Bring Rusty to this address tomorrow. We'll run some tests," the man said, offering a glimmer of hope. Jake scrambled to jot down the details, his hands trembling with a mix of fear and relief. The prospect of help, however uncertain, injected a fleeting dose of optimism into his heavy heart. As soon as Jake had the address secured, the line went dead. The abrupt end to the call left him staring at the phone, questions swirling in his mind, but there was no time for doubt. He pulled up Google Maps, locating the address. It was real, marked on the map, a destination that held Rusty's fragile hopes. With a deep breath, Jake began to prepare for what lay ahead, clinging to the thread of possibility that Rusty could be saved. Google Maps revealed the address to be on the outskirts of the city, an unexpected location that piqued Jake's curiosity and concern. It was far from any clinic he knew, nestled somewhere less travelled. The map displayed a winding route, leading away from the familiarity of city streets to a destination shrouded in mystery. Jake's resolve hardened. For Rusty, he would venture anywhere. Reaching the outskirts, Jake slowed the car, eyes widening. Before him sprawled not a clinic, but a sprawling farm or something akin. "Did I get this wrong?" he muttered, scanning the area. The serene, open space seemed an odd place for a medical rescue. Doubt crept in as he parked, the quiet of the rural landscape swallowing the sound of the engine. Pulling out his phone, Jake dialed the number again, seeking confirmation. The call rang into oblivion, no answer on the other end. Frustration knotted his brow as he tried repeatedly, only to be met with silence. Now, decision weighed on him, to venture into the unknown with Rusty or turn back to the safety of known streets, leaving the promise of hope behind. Jake sat in silence, wrestling with uncertainty. What's best for Rusty? He pondered aloud. His gaze fell on Rusty, trusting and unaware in the passenger seat. Decision made, Jake resolved to press on. "We've come this far, buddy," he said, a determined glint in his eyes. Venturing to the address seemed a risk worth taking, for Rusty's sake. Back at home, Jake hunched over his computer, searching for clues about the mysterious address. His efforts yielded nothing. No owner details, no activities reported, a blank slate on the internet. The lack of information only thickened the fog of mystery surrounding their destination. With every dead end, Jake's resolve was tested, yet his commitment to Rusty's chance at relief remained unshaken. Night fell, and Jake lay in bed, wrestling with his thoughts. Sleep eluded him, each tick of the clock a loud reminder of the day's worries. Rusty, oblivious to the turmoil, snored softly nearby, a balm to Jake's frayed nerves. Yet the comfort was fleeting. Jake's mind raced with what tomorrow might bring, the unknowns clouding his hope with worry. Rest was a stranger tonight. Lying awake, Jake watched Rusty sleep peacefully beside him. The dog's calm breathing was a stark contrast to Jake's own restlessness. Seeing Rusty so content, even in his frail state, made the weight of the decision to fight for him even more poignant. Jake couldn't bear the thought of his home without Rusty's presence, his silent strength a constant reassurance. As dawn crept in, Jake's doubts began to wane, replaced by a growing certainty. Watching Rusty chase dreams in his sleep, paws twitching and soft whimpers, Jake felt a surge of resolve. Rusty's zest for life, his unyielding spirit even in the face of illness, fueled Jake's determination. This battle, no matter how daunting, was one he was meant to undertake for Rusty. The morning light brought a mix of nerves and anticipation. Jake carefully helped Rusty into the car, ensuring his comfort for the journey ahead. With every item checked off, the reality of their mission sank in. Jake couldn't help but feel a tingle of excitement amidst his worries. Today could mark the beginning of Rusty's recovery. They were on their way, together against the odds. The drive stretched ahead, miles unfurling into the quiet countryside. With each passing hour, Jake's anticipation grew, matched only by the isolation of their surroundings. The world seemed to recede, leaving them enveloped in an expanse of nature's quiet. Jake's grip tightened on the wheel, the distance from civilization a stark reminder of the lengths he was willing to go for Rusty. Navigating the last leg of their journey, Jake noticed the stark absence of other vehicles. The occasional glance at his phone revealed a dwindling signal reinforcing their isolation. The realization that they were truly alone, far from the familiar, settled heavily. Yet, the sight of the approaching destination spurred them forward, into the heart of the unknown, where hope for Rusty's salvation awaited. Pulling up to the destination, Jake was met with an old, somewhat dilapidated building. It stood stark against the backdrop of the wilderness, seemingly abandoned and whispering tales of yesteryears. Jake's heart sank a little. Could this really be the place? He wondered aloud, peering through the car window, doubt clouding his hopeful venture. As Jake's apprehension grew, a figure burst from the building's doorway, a contrast to the somber mood. Waving excitedly, a man approached the car, his enthusiasm palpable. Jake, caught off guard by the warm greeting, felt a flicker of reassurance. Perhaps this unexpected place held promise after all, hidden behind its unassuming facade. The man who greeted Jake defied any expectation of a medical professional. Clad in simple, worn clothes, he resembled an old farmer more than anything. As Jake took in his surroundings, the reality set in. This was no farm. The absence of livestock or cultivated land hinted at a different purpose, one yet to be revealed amidst the sprawling wilderness. Surveying the area, Jake noted the striking solitude of the location. No animals grazed, no fields awaited the plow, only empty expanses stretching into dense forests. Isolation defined this place, its silence undisturbed by neighbours or the usual bustle of rural life. Here, amidst nature's untouched canvas, the old building stood as a solitary beacon. Approaching with a friendly stride, the man extended his hand to Jake, introducing himself as Cookie. "Heard you were coming," he said, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and warmth. Jake, while taken aback by the nickname and the casual demeanour, shook Cookie's hand. The initial unease gave way to a cautious optimism, the first step into an unexpected alliance forming in this secluded haven. As soon as Cookie laid eyes on Rusty, he was smitten. He crouched down to greet the dog, who, despite his illness, wagged his tail energetically. Rusty seemed to forget his woes, soaking up the attention and affection from his new admirer. Jake watched, a smile breaking through his worry, as Rusty enjoyed being the centre of someone else's world, if only for a moment. Jake's question about how Cookie planned to help was met with a surprising revelation. Cookie explained that he wouldn't be the one treating Rusty. Instead, his son, who had made this place a sanctuary of sorts for his work, would be taking over. Jake's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He hadn't expected this turn of events, and the mention of Cookie's son added a new layer of mystery to their journey. Cookie shared more about his son, Kyle, painting a picture of a dedicated individual who split his time between the city and this secluded retreat. Kyle used this space for his work, no questions asked, a haven for his pursuits. This arrangement seemed to suit both father and son, with Cookie proud, yet hands-off, about the specifics of Kyle's activities. Jake listened intently, intrigued by the family dynamics and Kyle's elusive presence. The story of other dogs and their owners coming here, leaving happier and healthier, offered Jake a lifeline of hope. Cookie's words painted a promising picture, one that Jake clung to amidst the uncertainty. The possibility that Rusty could be part of this success story filled him with a cautious optimism. It was a chance, however slim, that he was willing to take. Cookie then guided Jake inside, asking him to wait for Kyle's arrival, expected within the hour. Meanwhile, Cookie excused himself to return to work in the garage, leaving Jake and Rusty in the modest house. The surroundings were humble, the silence a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions and events that had led them here. Jake settled in, the weight of anticipation growing as he awaited the person who held Rusty's fate in his hands. Seated in the old living room, Jake's eyes wandered. The quiet was heavy, filled only by Rusty's gentle breathing as he slept. With Cookie out of sight, Jake's curiosity began to itch. The old house held secrets, its aged walls whispering tales of the past. The urge to explore, to uncover what lay beyond these sitting room confines, grew stronger with each passing minute. With Rusty resting and Cookie absent, Jake rose, his movements slow and deliberate. The house seemed to hold its breath as he passed, the air thick with dust. Each step took him deeper into the mystery of the place, the silence a stark contrast to the storm of questions in his mind. He tread lightly, aware of the sleeping dog and the invisible eyes of the house's history upon him. The further Jake ventured, the more the house revealed its state of neglect. Dust layered surfaces like a blanket, and the air held a mustiness that spoke of years without care. The disrepair was startling, leaving Jake to wonder how any sort of sophisticated work could be carried out here. The gap between expectation and reality widened, filling him with doubts about the capabilities of this place. Door after door led to rooms abandoned to time, their contents relegated to memories and storage. The lack of any sign of medical equipment or a treatment area heightened Jake's concern. Each empty room seemed to echo his growing apprehension, the silent house offering no reassurances. The promise of help for Rusty felt increasingly distant, lost among the clutter and shadows. Jake's thoughts turned to the garage, the one place Cookie had claimed for his work. But with Cookie inside, access was denied, curiosity thwarted by circumstance. The garage's mystery remained intact, its contents hidden from view, and Jake's hope of understanding what awaited Rusty barred by its closed doors. The quest for answers was paused, the path forward obscured. Jake stepped out into the crisp air, circling to the back of the house where an unexpected sight caught his eye. There stood a building starkly different from the rest, its newer facade and clean lines clashing with the aged weariness of the main house. Intrigue pulled Jake closer, the contrast igniting a flicker of hope that this might be where the promised help for Rusty lay hidden. Approaching the new building, Jake's hope was met with the cold reality of a locked door. He jiggled the handle, confirming the barrier to entry. The thought of breaking in crossed his mind, a desperate measure for desperate times. Yet, the idea of such drastic action felt like a step too far, leaving him stranded between the urge to act and the bounds of reason. Jake's contemplation was cut short by the sound of a car tearing into the driveway. Instinctively, he ducked behind the building, heart racing. Peering cautiously, he anticipated the emergence of Kyle, the mysterious figure at the center of this enigmatic setup. The need for discretion was paramount. Jake knew he shouldn't be caught snooping around, not when so much was at stake. As Kyle stepped out of the car, Jake's initial glimpse did little to reassure him. The man's demeanor, the casual way he smoked and surveyed his surroundings, painted a picture far removed from the professional savior Jake had hoped for. This first impression chipped away at the trust Jake had tentatively placed in this unexpected rescue operation, leaving him to question the decisions that had led him here. Witnessing Kyle's arrival and the stark contrast to his expectations, Jake felt a surge of uncertainty. The disparity between Cookie's descriptions and the reality before him sowed seeds of doubt in Jake's mind. Was this the person to entrust with Rusty's life? The gap between hope and reality widened, leaving Jake to grapple with the fear that perhaps they were in the wrong hands after all. Jake's heart raced as he watched Kyle enter the house, realization dawning that leaving was no longer a mere option. It was a necessity. Yet, Rusty was still inside, vulnerable and unaware of the shift in Jake's plans. The urgency to act settled heavily on Jake's shoulders, a daunting task with Kyle now between him and Rusty. Cautiously, Jake edged closer to the house, the murmur of voices guiding him. Through a cracked window, he caught snippets of conversation. Cookie and Kyle discussing his whereabouts. Cookie's intention to search the property sent a jolt of panic through Jake. He pressed closer, straining to hear more, the critical details of their plan unfolding just beyond the glass. From his hidden vantage point, Jake watched as Cookie ascended the stairs, his search beginning. Simultaneously, Kyle, with Rusty in tow, moved towards the back door, heading for the mysterious new building. Jake's heart sank. His window of opportunity was narrowing rapidly. The sight of Rusty, oblivious to the turmoil, being led away reignited Jake's resolve to act, despite the overwhelming odds. Hidden by shadows, Jake weighed his options as Kyle disappeared with Rusty into the building. The urge to intervene battled with the reality of his situation. Exposure could ruin any chance of rescue. Jake's mind raced, calculating the risks of confronting Kyle. The stakes were high, and the balance of power was not in his favor, forcing Jake to consider every possible move with care. Confrontation loomed as a dangerous gamble. Jake knew that challenging Kyle directly would inevitably draw Cookie into the fray, tipping the scales against him. The thought of a physical confrontation, especially when outnumbered, was daunting. Jake's resolve hardened, aware that stealth and cunning would serve him better than brute force in this delicate dance of rescue and escape. Jake slipped into the house, a shadow moving with purpose. The creaks of Cookie's steps upstairs were loud in the silence. Jake's hand found a knife in the kitchen. Not to use, he told himself, but as a caution. With the cold weight in his hand, he ascended the stairs, each step deliberate, bracing for what came next. Jake's presence caught Cookie off guard, the surprise clear in his widened eyes. Jake's whispered warnings hung in the air, heavy with desperation. The situation teetered on a knife edge, both men aware of the stakes. Cookie, recognizing the seriousness in Jake's stance, nodded his compliance, choosing silence over escalation. With quick thinking, Jake located rope and tape within the house, materials that would ensure Cookie's silence. He worked swiftly, securing Cookie in a way that was firm yet mindful of his well-being. Once convinced Cookie couldn't call out for help, Jake took a moment to steady his racing heart, the next phase of his plan crystallizing in his mind. Back outside, Jake faced the small building again, his resolve firm. The question of how to enter posed a new challenge. Should he announce his presence with force or attempt a quieter entry? The dilemma held him in place, the weight of the decision pressing down. Time was slipping away with Rusty on the other side of the door. Jake's hand tested the door once more, confirming his fear. It remained unyielding. The possibilities of what might be happening inside sent a wave of urgency through him. Without a way in, Jake's thoughts raced, searching for any solution that might reunite him with Rusty. The unknowns of the situation weighed heavily, fueling his determination to act. Jake's entrance into the small building revealed an unexpected scene. Inside was a fully equipped operation room, sterile and bright. Kyle, focused and precise, was attending to Rusty with an expertise that stunned Jake. The urgency in Kyle's voice about keeping the room sterile snapped Jake back to reality, prompting him to quickly shut the door, sealing the sterile environment once again. After closing the door, Jake stood momentarily confused. Kyle's insistence on a sterile environment underlined the seriousness of the situation. With a mix of shock and curiosity, Jake retreated to the house, his mind racing with questions. The complexity of what he'd just witnessed was overwhelming, a far cry from the suspicions that had initially clouded his judgment. Back in the house, Jake hastened to untie Cookie, offering apologies for the misunderstanding. Cookie, surprisingly understanding, accepted Jake's apology with a nod. He recognized the fear and love behind Jake's actions. Their mutual concern for Rusty bridged the gap of misunderstanding, laying the groundwork for a deeper explanation of the day's startling events. As they settled down, Cookie began to unravel the story of his son, Kyle. Describing him as a successful yet eccentric surgeon from the city, Cookie revealed Kyle's immense passion for animals. Despite not having a veterinary license, Kyle's drive to aid animals in desperate need had led him to offer his medical skills freely. This revelation painted Kyle in a new light, one of dedication and compassion. Cookie elaborated on Kyle's unconventional path. Lacking a veterinary license didn't deter him. Instead, it fueled his commitment to offering a lifeline to animals like Rusty. Operating in secrecy, Kyle extended hope and healing, asking nothing in return. This underground effort to save animals no one else could or would care for highlighted a rare altruism, deeply resonating with Jake's own love for Rusty. Kyle had to operate in secrecy due to lacking a veterinary license. This underground setup was his only option to help animals in need. The small building, away from prying eyes, served as his makeshift clinic. Here, Kyle could apply his medical skills without the constraints of formal accreditation, a silent vow to heal those forgotten by the system. Cookie was fully on board with Kyle's clandestine veterinary work, offering his support in any way needed. After the tense hours spent in anticipation, Kyle finally emerged from the operating room. The air was thick with anxiety and hope as Jake and Cookie awaited news. The silence of the waiting a testament to the gravity of Rusty's situation. Kyle announced Rusty's successful surgery with a calm assurance, explaining that the dog was now resting comfortably. The operation had gone well, and Rusty would need plenty of rest to recover fully. The news that Rusty could now look forward to more happy years filled the room with a tangible sense of relief and gratitude. Jake's thankfulness knew no bounds, and his earlier actions were met with understanding and forgiveness from Kyle. The shared goal of Rusty's well-being had bridged any gap their initial misunderstanding might have caused. Kyle's focus remained on the joy of saving an animal's life, a sentiment that resonated deeply with Jake, creating a bond forged through the love of Rusty.